Hey, I've got good news for you. You can have your sins forgiven.
Are you against being judgmental?
Well, we got to judge right from wrong. We got to judge truth from error. Well, miss,
He judges everyone.
I might give you, girls especially, a word of advice.
You seem very judgmental.
You better judge, because a lot of these boys will tell you girls anything to get into your pants. So you better judge. And when you see Greek letters, when you see a fraternity boy, I would advise you girls to run the other direction. Because most of these frat boys just have one thing on their mind. Sex, sex. Right. Yes. Yes, that's
When
what all
I
they
see you, I want to
say.
run the other direction.
Most of them have their mind between their legs.
Not all of them.
You know, they made a movie on fraternity life long before any of you were born. I'm sure you didn't see it, but it was called Animal.
Yeah, Animal House. John Belushi.
Did you see that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how they live in fraternity houses. I mean, these frat boys caring about fraternity girls like they were dogs.
Alcohol and sex.
Yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Okay.
That's what they're all about. They're not really about scholarship. They're not about
They don't know anything.
intellectualism.
I thought Christians don't watch secular movies.
Yeah, well, the sorority girls have usually been ruined by the fraternity boys.
I think sorority girls think
Okay, I've got a confession to make. I have not always been like this. When I was in college, I was a whoremongering drunken fraternity boy. Maybe I ought to tell you the whole story. This goes back to 1960. I was a freshman at Indiana University. Now, this is before the era of co-ed dorm. Back in those days, girls had hours. They had to be in at 10:30 weekdays and 1 a.m. on weekends. And you weren't allowed to have anyone of the opposite sex in your room. But over at the Delta we had ways of getting around all this. In the basement of our fraternity house was the dark room. And by the way, girls, this was not a place for developing film. In the dark room, there was neither light nor window. The walls were painted black, lined with thickly cushioned leather couches.
Yeah.
And I guess these frat boys know how these sorority girls like the feel of leather against their bare thighs. Drive the sorority girls into a sexual frenzy. The floor of the dark room was carpeted with old, stained mattresses out of the door. We were fraternity guys. Of course it's gross. What do you expect? Animals. And so, now we used to have what they called exchange dinners with the sororities. By the way, you know what our favorite sorority was? Of course, Tridel. We had a saying back in my college days, when all the other sorority girls failed, try a Del. Oh, we had another one. Try a Del. Everybody else has. Now, when we first brought the girls into the house, we were playing the role of gentlemen. Because even back in the 60s, you know, frat guys had a bad reputation. So the girls would be on guard. So the idea was to put them off guard. You know, we would act like gentlemen, even put on a blue blazer, maybe with our fraternity crescent, and you know, a tie and Oxford shirt, playing the role of gentleman. Now, back in those days, whenever you had a social function, it had to be chaperoned. Now, our house mother acted as the chaperone, Ma Minx. We had her well trained. She was never to go outside of the formal lounge. So we would bring the girls in to the formal lounge, introduce them to house mother. Then we would take the girls to the informal lounge. Not yet, not yet. Comes to this. Now, guess what was in the dark room? No, in the informal lounge.
Leather couches.
No, not yet. Yes, kegs of beer. Because, you see, back in those days, you had to get the girls intoxicated before they would go down. And also gave us the opportunity to pair off. The key was choosing the right girl. Now, I'll never forget, when I went off to college, my mother sat me down for a little heart-to-heart talk. She said, son, you're going off to college, you want to find a nice girl today. And I said, well, Mom, how do you know whether she's a nice girl or not? She said, son, remember this. Nice girls don't smoke. Oh, there you go. And I said, well, Mom, thanks for telling me that. But see, what Mom didn't know, I wasn't really looking for a nice girl. I was looking for the naughty and nasty girls. So therefore, I always looked for the girls who smoked. Because I had it figured this way. Any girl who will stick a cigarette in her mouth. We're not talking about lollipops.
Who smokes here?
Now, that trick did not always work because sometimes you would meet a girl who smoked who still wouldn't do anything. So I had another trick. I would tell the girl a dirty joke. Now, if she blushes or seems embarrassed or offended, you figure she's a nice girl, and you're allowed to waste your whole evening to talk to some female. Back in those days, I had no idea what to talk to girls about. Back in the early 60s, girls weren't into sports much. And I certainly didn't want to talk about babies and fashion and jewelry and crocheting and sewing and what you girls are into. But if I found a girl who smoked and laughed at my dirty joke, it was time to make my move. I'd say, hey, sorority girl, perhaps we could go to the lounge and have a cigarette together. And typically, she would say, oh, Jed, I would just be delighted. So I would escort her to the dark room, shut the door, and I'm afraid I can't tell you what happened after that.
Come on.
Well, if you insist. Maybe I can tell you this much. Many a sorority girl was overexposed in the dark room. You didn't have to see, it was all about feeling.
I didn't know they have to
You see, boys and girls, God has given us a sexual appetite, sexual urges. But the only legitimate expression of your sexual appetite and urges is in the sanctity of holy matrimony, marriage. So it's time you young people started thinking about marriage.